Welcome to our Ultimate Running Training Guide. In this video, we're bringing you a comprehensive look at everything you need to optimize your running routine, from crucial tips on marathon nutrition to avoiding common training mistakes, debunking popular running myths, and figuring out the ideal number of runs per week. We've got you covered. Whether you're prepping for a marathon or just looking to improve your running, these insights will help you train smarter and run stronger. Let's get started. Are you making these common running mistakes? Discover the 9 worst errors that even experienced runners make and learn how to overcome them. Running is a challenging sport. One small mistake can lead to lengthy setbacks, which can ruin your enjoyment of the sport and prevent you from achieving your goals. In this video, I'm shining a light on the 9 common mistakes made by runners and providing the knowledge and strategies to sidestep them so you can keep progressing. I'm talking about training tweaks, mindset strategies, nutrition, and even the equipment that can help you out. Runners often fall into the trap of thinking that if they can run, say, 30 miles in a week, then 40 would help them become even better. Or if one interval session is helping them to improve their fitness, then surely 2 will make them even faster. But that's not always the case. Increasing your volume and intensity can cause more problems, which is why you need to know your limits and progress cautiously. You should also balance your high intensity workouts with low impact recovery focused sessions, because those easier days are essential to your body's recovery and growth. Ignoring pain or discomfort, no matter how small, can cause bigger issues further down the line. Even I've been guilty of pushing through slight injury niggles, thinking that they'll sort themselves out, and I can honestly say this strategy has never really worked that well. The old wisdom of the saying, "a stitch in time saves 9, has never been more relevant than in this situation. It means recognizing the early signs of an injury and allowing yourself a few days to recover is far more beneficial than ignoring the discomfort and risking a much longer, forced break from running. It's a smart strategy that prioritizes your longer term health and ensures you can continue what you love doing without unnecessary setbacks. It's also well worth having a regular appointment with a massage therapist and having a sports injury specialist on speed dial so that you can book in quickly should the worst happen. Browsing online for new running kit can be very addictive. All the latest gadgets, shoes and recovery hacks promise to rocket your performance to new heights. However, not everything will help you improve your running performance, which is why you should focus on the most important things first. For me, this is your footwear. A good pair of shoes will enable you to run comfortably for many miles. Begin by choosing shoes specifically designed for your foot type and running style, and then choose the most comfortable pair, rather than the ones in the nicest colours or with the biggest discount. Comfort has been shown to correlate with injury prevention, so don't ignore what your feet are telling you. Running is a natural movement. However, if you took a sample of 100 runners, they'd all look very different. Some will fall into running movements that will ruin their efficiency and invite injury. We're talking things like overstriding, poor posture, and erratic breathing. The solution is to focus on the basics of good running form. Land with your foot underneath the center of your gravity. Think about tall posture and relaxed shoulders, and aim for a nice flowing stride with a deep and steady breathing pattern. Runners love to run, that's a fact. Whereas what most runners hate more than anything is being inside a gym lifting heavy weights. However, plenty of evidence supports the use of strength training to improve your running strength whilst reducing your risk of injury. The solution is to include 2 time-efficient gym or home-based strength sessions within your weekly plan. These don't need to be long, nor do they need to be fancy. And if you're looking for a running training plan that has strength and conditioning, feel free to preview mine via the link in the description below or on screen. In a training session or a race, poor pacing can ruin your run. Those overexcited opening miles and surges up hills are often the main contenders. As tempting as it is to push hard when you see a crowd, carried along by the adrenaline, smart runners know that pushing hard at the wrong stage will cause problems later on in their run. There are 2 solutions to this problem. One is to do training sessions that are designed to rehearse your race pace, whilst the other is to use a race pace calculator to estimate your optimal pace. And then on the day, stick to that pace for the first half of your race, and then see how you feel and adjust as necessary during the second half. We have race pace calculators on my coaching website, so I'll leave a link to those in the description. No matter what distance you're running, you need fuel. Whether that's a quick snack before your morning run around the block, or a full nutrition plan to help maintain your energy levels during a long run, being well fueled isn't just about having more energy for a particular run. It's also about helping your body to recover faster and bounce back quicker for subsequent sessions. This problem can be a complex one, but it helps if you can track what you put in your body before, during and after running. It's worth spending a few days tracking your meals in an app such as MyFitnessPal, just to understand the carbohydrates, proteins and fats you're consuming on a daily basis, as well as recording what you're eating during your training sessions. Based on this information, you can adjust your food intake to ensure you're optimally fueling your body for the running sessions you're doing and to prevent you collapsing on the sofa and feeling tired after every single run. It can be easy to beat yourself up about your times in training or on race day. Self-doubt, unrealistic goals, and a harsh inner critic can derail your progress at any stage. I could tell you to have a more positive mindset, but this is easy to say and harder to achieve. But the truth is, it's impossible to post a personal best on every run, and you can't be in peak shape for all 12 months of the year. So at some point, you do need to accept that. All you can do is to set small, realistic, achievable goals for your events and training, and allow yourself space to celebrate your victories no matter how small they may seem. Sticking to one pace for all your runs is not bad if that's what you enjoy doing. However, if your goal is to get faster or you're striving to run further, it's well worth changing up the pace that you run at. If your goal is to run a fast 5K, for example, then at least once per week, you should fit in a specific speed session where you run at or faster than your goal pace. At the other end of the scale, if you're aiming for an ultra marathon, then you'll need to clock up some longer runs at a slower pace than you'd usually run. We've identified the 9 common mistakes that runners face, and you should now have the strategies to avoid them. With smart training, good running technique, strength training, and smart pacing, you can avoid the common setbacks that leave many runners disappointed or sidelines for weeks or months. Are you looking for a way to quickly improve your running performance? In this video, I'll reveal the 3 essential weekly runs that will build your speed and endurance and take you to the next level in as little as 6 weeks. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the 3 essential weekly runs that you should include in your training if you want to keep improving your endurance and speed. I'll cover speed work, tempo runs and long runs while diving into their benefits, how hard you should run, and providing examples of different session types for each run. What I love about these 3 sessions is that if you only did these and nothing else, you'd still get in great shape for running. It would mean that every workout you do has a purpose rather than just running at the same intensity all the time. These workouts are all pretty challenging though, which means that any additional runs you do should be easy jogs between 20 and 45 minutes in duration, done at a conversational pace. And give yourself a couple of days between the 3 key sessions to give yourself a chance to recover. Remember that any additional runs you do, as well as the 3 key sessions I'm about to talk about, subject to the law of diminishing returns. Whereas if you want the best return from very limited training time, stick with the 3 key workouts that I'm about to talk about. The only downside of these 3 key sessions is that none of them are easy, so if you're someone who prefers a relaxing jog, they might not be ideal for you. Whereas if you're looking to mix up your workouts and improve your speed and endurance, keep watching. Before I start describing these sessions, don't forget to comment below and let me know what your favourite running workouts are. Speedwork sessions are designed to increase your pace and improve your running efficiency. They involve short, intense intervals followed by recovery periods. These workouts can be adjusted to different levels of difficulty by varying the duration and intensity of each interval, as well as the recovery period. But why do them? Well, speedwork sessions help you build your running form, improve your VO2 max and push your comfort zones, which all contribute to enhanced endurance and faster run times. How hard should you run? Well, you should run each interval at the hardest effort that you can consistently sustain throughout. In other words, don't run the first couple of reps like Usain Bolt and then leave yourself exhausted for all the other ones. If we're using the rate of perceived exertion scale, it should feel like an 8 or a 9 out of 10, where 10 is the hardest you can go. I would normally give you heart rate guidance here, but heart rate is not that useful during short, sharp efforts because your heart rate takes a while to truly reflect how hard you're running. So it's best to go by feel or perceived exertion during interval workouts like these. And don't be tempted to shortcut the recovery periods either. It's better to wait until your heart rate has dropped to 65 to 70% of your maximum so that you're ready to push yourself hard again. Let's look at a couple of example sessions. Session 1 is 8 times 400 meters hard, 2 or 3 minutes rest between each effort. If you're relatively new to running, you could start with just 4 efforts of 400 meters and then add 1 each week until you get up to around 8 or even 10. Whereas if you're an experienced runner, you should build up from 8 to around 12 reps eventually by adding 1 each week. But I'd recommend capping it there, otherwise you'll end up turning it into a tempo session rather than a speed session. If you're unable to use meters as a measure, you could do 8 times 90-second efforts instead. Another good example workout is 4 times 800 meters hard with 3 to 4 minute rest intervals in between. And again, if you're a beginner runner, start off with 2 efforts and gradually build up to 4 over time. And if you prefer to use time as a measure, you could do 3-minute efforts instead of 800 meters. And with all interval sessions like these, you should include at least 10 minutes of warm-up running and a 5-minute cool-down jog. Tempo runs involve sustained, moderately paced efforts for an extended period. This helps improve your lactate threshold and boost your aerobic capacity. But why do them? Tempo runs train your body to run efficiently at a sustainable fast pace, teaching it to clear lactic acid more effectively, allowing you to maintain a steady pace for longer in races. Aim to run at 80 to 90% of your maximum heart rate here, or a pace that feels challenging but sustainable. You should just about be able to talk during your tempo runs, but you probably wouldn't want to. And if you're using heart rate as a guide, remember it will take a few minutes before it reflects your actual effort. Personally, I prefer to break my tempo runs into smaller sections so that they're mentally easier to get done. So let's look at a couple of example sessions. Session 1 is 3 lots of 10 minutes at a moderately hard effort that would feel like 7 out of 10, with 1 to 2 minute jog rests in between. If you're new to this kind of thing, try just 1 10-minute effort at first and build up to 3 over a period of weeks and months. Session 2 is 5 lots of 5 minutes at a moderately hard effort that feels like 7 or 8 out of 10, with 1 to 2 minutes jog rest in between. Long runs are slow, steady efforts that improve your aerobic endurance, preparing you for the demands of longer races. These sessions build your cardiovascular and muscular endurance while also enhancing your mental toughness, helping you to tackle longer distances with confidence. Aim to run at around 65 to 75% of your maximum heart rate, or at a comfortable and conversational pace. And let's look at some examples of long endurance runs. So if you're a 10K runner, you might aim to run between 60 through to 90 minutes at 65 to 75% of your max heart rate. If that sounds like a long way, start off with whatever feels comfortable now and achievable, and then increase it by 5% per week. Because if you attempt to run too far too soon, you'll end up sore, tired, and possibly injured. If you're a half marathon runner, your long run should be between 90 minutes and 2 hours at 65 to 75% of your max heart rate. Again, you need to build up these long runs gradually, so start off with whatever's comfortable and achievable for you now, and then increase it by 5% per week. If you're a marathon runner, your long runs would be up to 2 or even 3 hours long, again at 65 to 75% of your max heart rate. And again, you'd build up to that gradually, so you wouldn't start off with such a long run. So we've talked about the 3 key session types that you should include every week. But before you start including these into your schedule, I just wanted to mention a couple of exceptions to the rule. Firstly, if you're a triathlete and you're already training hard for the swim and cycle sections, doing 3 key run sessions every week might feel like too much. And that would certainly be the case for me. In which case I would drop the tempo run and replace it with a recovery run instead. And then you could combine your tempo efforts and speed work session into one manageable workout instead. Secondly, if you're training for a marathon, it might also feel too challenging to fit 3 hard run workouts into the space of 7 days on a consistent basis, in which case I'd also recommend swapping a tempo run for a recovery run, and then adding some marathon race pace sections into your weekly long run instead. Finally, please don't launch into these 3 key workouts without building up to them gradually. Otherwise you'll get injured and you won't be able to run at all. So start off with much shorter versions of what I've been talking about and increase them by 5% each week. And if you still feel like you need a little extra help planning your training, click on the link in the video description below to preview my inexpensive running plans with rapid coach support. Are you planning to run a marathon? Worried about what to eat and what to drink during a race? Don't worry. In this video, I'm going to share with you essential nutrition and hydration tips for boosting your performance in marathons. Throughout my years of running different marathons, I've learned the importance of hydration and nutrition in terms of performance. And today I'm going to share with you the steps you need to take in order to fuel up properly for your next marathon. First up, you need to decide whether you're going to carry your own nutrition on race day or rely on the on-course nutrition or a combination of both. So you need to start by trying the products that are available on the day to see if you like them. And if you don't, you should start experimenting with various energy gels, drinks, or chews until you find something that suits you. Begin this process 10 weeks before the event and practice it during your long training runs. Research suggests that you can gradually train your gut to cope better with energy products, so don't leave it until the last minute. In the final 2 or 3 days before your race, you need to make sure your muscles are fueled with plenty of energy in the form of muscle glycogen. You can do this by increasing the ratio of carbohydrate that you eat versus fats and proteins. That doesn't mean you should cut out protein or fat altogether, but rather focus on prioritizing carbohydrates such as rice, bread, pasta, or potatoes. On the day before your race, you should also cut out high fiber foods such as lettuce and corn to reduce your risk of an upset stomach during the race. If you're traveling for your marathon, you'll need to plan what you're going to eat and where so that you don't end up queuing for tables in bad restaurants or fast food joints. Your options are self-catering, making reservations at a reputable restaurant in advance, or getting a healthy, high-carb meal delivered to your room. Personally, I prefer the latter option, which is getting a meal delivered to my room, and I usually opt for something rice-based because it's full of carbohydrate and light on the stomach. But whatever you do, make sure you plan it in advance. Having a proper carbohydrate-based breakfast before a marathon is crucial to replenish your liver glycogen. What you eat is up to you. Some people perform well with a couple of bagels and coffee, others prefer oatmeal, waffles with syrup, energy bars, or a small bowl of rice. Regardless of your choice, aim for at least 100 grams of carbohydrates, which is the equivalent to 4 or 5 energy gels. It helps if you practice eating your chosen pre-race breakfast in training, before intense sessions or low-key races. Timing-wise, you should eat your breakfast about 3 or 4 hours before your race start. Although if you don't suffer from gastrointestinal issues, 2 to 3 hours before may also work. Monitor the colour of your urine too. Lighter shades indicate proper hydration, while darker shades suggest the need for additional fluids. Take a bottle of water to sip from and a gel to consume 15 minutes before the start. Alternatively, sip an energy drink in the final hour. And make sure you practice doing this before your long training runs as well. Because that final gel or energy drink will then become available as a source of carbohydrate during the early stages of the run. During the marathon itself, you'll need to keep topping up your carbohydrates and fluids. However, it's also important not to overconsume, as having too much fluid or carbohydrate can lead to an upset stomach. For your carbohydrate requirements, aim for an intake of 50 to 70 grams per hour, depending on your target finish time. Those aiming for a 4 to 5 hour finish may consider the lower end of that range, while individuals striving for a 3 hour or sub 3 hour finish may benefit from being at the higher end of that nutritional range. Here are some common carbohydrate sources and their approximate carbohydrate content. A banana has 24 to 30 grams of carbohydrate. An energy gel like this has 20 to 27 grams of carbohydrate. 4 or 5 energy chews, that would be 16 to 25 grams. And 10 jelly beans would give you about 11 grams of carbohydrate. As for your fluid intake, it helps to know your sweat rate in advance. You can calculate this by weighing yourself before and after your key sessions in the weeks leading up to your race. Then subtract your post-training weight from your pre-training weight, and then add the volume of fluids consumed to calculate your sweat rate. If you need help with this, there are also online sweat calculators that can help you find the results to that calculation. Then during your race, keep your sweat rate in mind as you decide how much to drink, taking into account the conditions and how you feel as well. You probably won't be able to drink as many fluids as you lose, but at least knowing your sweat rate gives you some idea, and if you combine that with listening to your body, you'll hopefully be on the right track. Typically, the cups provided during a marathon contain approximately 150 millilitres or 5 ounces of liquid, with runners consuming around 100 millilitres or 3 ounces of that amount, because you spill some or leave some inevitably. Sodium can also help with fluid absorption, and it's good to have some of that in your drinks or gels, but don't go overboard. Marathons aren't long enough to cause significant sodium losses that would impact your performance or health. I just want to mention caffeine here, which some runners use before or during a marathon to enhance their performance. This practice is supported by some scientific evidence, although individual tolerance and perceptions may vary. Most people benefit from relatively small amounts of caffeine, for instance 3 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, which is 200 milligrams of caffeine for a 70 kilogram or 144 pound person. And you shouldn't exceed a daily intake of 400 milligrams of caffeine from all sources. Caffeinated energy gels typically contain between 25 and 50 milligrams of caffeine, while an espresso has around 80 to 100 milligrams. To improve your chances of running a successful marathon, you need to do the following. Try different food options during training to work out what's best for you. Familiarise yourself with the aid stations and their offerings. Gradually increase your carbohydrate intake leading up to race day to replenish your glycogen stores. Eat a familiar breakfast 3 to 4 hours before the start, avoiding excessive fibre, fat or protein. Take a gel or carbohydrate drink to consume, and prioritise hydration and carbohydrate intake during the race itself. And don't forget, if you need any help training for a marathon, I've created some free PDF marathon training plans, which you're welcome to try. Just click the link on screen or in the description section and choose marathon from the drop-down menu. Have you ever wondered why some marathon runners seem to breeze past you, especially in the final few miles? Today we're uncovering the 7 training mistakes that could be costing you vital minutes on race day. Are you aiming for a personal best at your next marathon, but feel that no matter what you do, you can't seem to improve your times? It could be that one of these training mistakes is holding you back. So let's look at the errors many runners make and make sure you steer clear of them on race day. Let's get started. Every great marathon starts months before race day with a strong foundation. That means building a robust aerobic base. Many runners jump straight into fancy high-intensity workouts and neglect the all-important endurance. This leads many runners on a path to plateau and even injury. To avoid this, focus on gradually increasing your mileage and incorporating regular long, slow runs before adding or ramping up the interval sessions. The total distance you run each week in training will have a bearing on how well your marathon goes. And it's easier and safer to gradually build up your weekly distance if you're not cramming in too many fast runs. While pace is an important aspect of training, focusing on it too much can lead to overtraining and burnout. Some days you might want an easy run, for example on a recovery day, and some days you might not be fully recovered and therefore you feel a bit sluggish during your interval session. Well, it's okay sometimes to run a little bit easier and even ignore your watch. Remember, not every run is a race. Elite Kenyan runners are a great example of this. Many of their training runs are done at 7 minutes per mile pace or slower, which is a very easy pace for them, considering that they run under 5 minutes per mile during a marathon. Recovery is where the magic happens, and that's when you get fitter and stronger, especially when marathon training. So ensure you're getting plenty of sleep, eating a balanced diet rich in nutrients with plenty of carbohydrates and protein for repair, and you should also schedule in rest days and recovery weeks throughout your training plan to allow your body to adapt and strengthen. If you're always on your feet, skipping sleep and eating badly, you won't get fitter and stronger at the same rate as someone who is. In my marathon and triathlon training plans, for instance, I include at least 1 rest day per week and an active recovery week every 4th week. And you can preview those training plans by clicking the link on screen or in the video description. Strength training is often overlooked by marathon runners. Some people believe it adds unnecessary muscle weight, while others prefer to prioritise their running more. However, it is vital for injury prevention and improving your running economy. Simply doing 2 or 3 short sessions per week can make a significant difference. Focus on exercises that target key running muscles like the glutes, hamstrings and calves. And there's no harm in targeting the upper body and core muscles, as these all help your posture and general strength. To perform well on race day, you must train in conditions similar to those that you'll face during your marathon. If your race is hilly, train on hills if you can. If it's on trails, then hit the trails. If it's likely to be hot, prepare for the heat as much as you can. Being highly specific in your training will make you physically and mentally ready for race day. The impact of fueling and hydration are often underestimated for marathon training. During long runs, practice your race day nutrition and hydration strategies to see what works best for you. Experiment with different amounts and brands of gels and drinks and the timings of them as well to ensure that you can keep your energy levels high and that you don't feel sick or anything worse during your event. One of the most common mistakes I see is runners mismanaging their pace during their workouts. It's crucial to understand the purpose of each session. Is your workout building endurance or speed, or is it helping you recover? Either way, you should adjust your running pace accordingly. Running too hard on recovery runs can lead to you running slower on your hard runs. In the long term, this can severely affect your chances of a fast time in your marathon. Remember, it's often better to be slightly over-recovered than overtrained. So make sure these easy runs are completed at an easy intensity. Are you tired of hitting the wall during marathons, even after months of hard training? In this video, I'm interviewing a runner with a game-changing nutrition strategy that transformed their performance at the London Marathon in 2024. Welcome to today's video, where we're revealing a new way to fuel a marathon that could help you avoid the wall and run faster than ever before. Joining us is runner and triathlon coach Ant Gritton, who ran an incredible 2:27 at this year's London Marathon. He achieved this on a relatively low weekly mileage, whilst training as an amateur triathlete and working full-time. Previously, he ran a 2:52 marathon in 2014, but since incorporating a new method of nutrition, he ran a 2:30 last year and a 2:27 marathon this year. What impressed me most was that his marathon race pace was only marginally slower than his best half marathon race pace. And that's something you usually only see in high mileage runners who regularly clock 80, 90 or 100 miles per week in training, whereas Ant managed it on far less mileage than that. So in this video, we're going to learn how he prepared and the nutrition method that changed everything for him. Hi Ant, welcome to the MyProCoach YouTube channel. I just wanted to start off by asking you what a typical training week looked like for you while you were training for this marathon.
Yes, I mean, in a peak week, I'd be trying to run around 5 or 6 times a week. One of those sessions would always be a key interval session. So they were normally like fairly short reps, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5-minute long reps, where I was trying to run clearly way above or way quicker than the marathon pace. I'd always make sure that I had my long run in there, and generally in the early days or early on in the program, that was just a steady long run, and as race day came up, they were much bigger or more focused towards marathon pace. So, you know, one of the key sessions would have been 10 by 8 minutes or maybe 10 miles at marathon pace. So they were sort of much bigger, much meatier sessions as I got closer towards the marathon itself. Around that was all easier runs, and of course I always made sure that I was swimming and cycling as well, because my main goal this year is obviously to do a triathlon, so that was always included within the training plan as well.
So how much triathlon or swimming and cycling training were you doing in addition to the 5 runs or so that you're doing?
Yeah, so it was always 2 to 3 swims a week. My plan was to try and hit those 3 swims every single week, but to be honest, as I got deeper into the marathon training, I just found that I needed sleep more than I needed the 5 o'clock alarm call to get to the swimming pool. So as training progressed in terms of the running mileage going up and the running training going up, my swimming training did fall off a cliff a little bit. So I think in the last couple of months, I was hitting maybe 1 or 2 swims a week in that latter stages. For the cycling, I tried to make sure I was doing one easy ride in the week, and that was more as a recovery spin from doing the run sessions. And if I could get out at the weekend, if the weather was nice, and I'd go out and do a long ride. But obviously, this marathon block happened throughout the British winter, so those long rides weren't as frequent as they maybe should have been.
Sure. And what do you think your range of weekly mileage was?
So my weekly running mileage was anywhere around 50 to 80k. Before Christmas, I was hitting around 90k. So this was, over 20 weeks beforehand. But I actually managed to pick up an Achilles injury over Christmas. So this was, 4 months, I guess, before the marathon. So I had to take that 4 weeks off. So when I got back into running again, obviously trying to rehab the Achilles at the same time, I was building back up around sort of 50 to 70 kilometers as my weekly running mileage, basically.
What does your nutrition look like then when you're training? Because I know you're quite into the nutrition side of things.
So yeah, my nutrition during my runs varies on depending on what the session I'm doing. So for my midweek runs, if I'm going out for a steady base run, I might maybe have a gel or an energy tube before I step out the door. When I'm doing my key interval sessions, I'll generally carry a gel with me on that interval session. So I'll do my warm up, and then just before the start of the session, I'll take on an energy gel just so that I'm used to taking on calories or carbohydrates during those high intensity efforts. I know what my body's going to be dealing with. That changes slightly as I get towards my long run. So if I'm going out for a steady long run, generally speaking, if it's at an easy pace, I'll be hitting around sort of 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate an hour, which is, maybe 1 to 2 gels every hour. But as the intensity of those long runs increased, so I was doing, marathon paced efforts, for example, that's when I would then start to nudge the carbohydrate intake up a little bit. So trying to hit that kind of 90 to 100 grams an hour number, just so that I'm used to consuming that amount of carbohydrate whilst pushing the intensity that I want to on race day.
Sure. So you were in effect training your gut to tolerate higher levels of carbohydrate intake.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, and I don't know whether it's entirely linked, but previous years when I've so for Manchester Marathon last year, for example, I did have gut issues during that, and I've got a funny feeling it was because I wasn't used to hitting those number of carbohydrates during my training runs, whereas this year I was very strict on, I knew what number I wanted to hit on race day, therefore in the previous weeks before that, definitely in those sort of like last 6 to 8 weeks, I was making sure I hit that number on every long run that I was doing.
So let's talk about the marathon itself now. What did you eat in the lead up to your marathon in the last couple of days?
So in the last 48 hours, I tried to do a standard carbohydrate load. So in those last sort of 48 hours, the scientific recommendation is to hit around 8 to 12 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram of body weight. So for me, weighing 73 kilos, it's a lot of carbs that you need to get in, and it's an uncomfortable amount to consume for 2 days. I know through measuring it on an app called MyFitnessPal that I had 11.3 grams per kilogram of body weight on the last 2 days, which is about 833 grams of carbs. So it's a lot of food. It's an uncomfortable amount of food. But having done that 3 times in the past, I know that I can stomach that amount of food, and I know that I can reap the benefits of that on event day as well. It just feels like I've got a lot more energy whilst I'm running because of that carbohydrate load. And essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to overload your muscles with glycogen so you can then call on those stores during the run.
What did you eat for your breakfast on the morning of the race?
So yeah, breakfast is always an interesting one. So in an ideal scenario, I'd be at home with my bowl of porridge, doing what I normally do in training. So because we were staying in a hotel in London, we only had access to a kettle in the morning. So actually what I did buy is like 2 like gluten-free porridge pots, so that I know there was no milk or any additives in there that I didn't want or didn't agree with me. So I tried them in training for a couple of times beforehand, so I knew that I could wake up, boil a kettle, make my porridge up very quickly in the morning, and then be out the door and on the start line basically. So yeah, 2 porridge pots in the morning, and I had an energy chew as well just beforehand.
How about the marathon itself on race day and during the marathon? What did you eat and drink then?
Yeah, so I try and follow a very, very simple strategy. I've been doing triathlon and marathons for quite a few years, and I know that if I've got a complicated strategy, I tend to either forget or just put things to the back of my mind. So for the last couple of events that I've been doing, I've been trying to reduce the number of gels I've been having, just purely for the faff of grabbing them out of pockets and opening them and things like that. So what I've actually been using is something called a flow gel. So that's 10 energy gels in one, but I can then pour into something like this, like a soft flask. So I know that I can carry all of my gels in that and then just literally sip as I go. I can hold it in my hand, I can get the number of carbohydrates that I want to whilst in the middle of my flow. I don't have to think about reaching to my pocket and what to do with litter and things like that. So like I said, I want to try and make the strategy as easy and as simple as possible. And that was the easiest way I've found to do it so far.
Sure. And how about drinking? What did you drink during the race?
So for drinking, I actually carried another soft flask. So I actually carried another one slightly bigger than this one, which was filled with water. And I added to that a tablet of precision hydration. So I'm a very salty and very sweaty athlete. So I need to make sure that I've got plenty of sodium in my drinks so that I'm not getting dehydrated during those run sessions.
Sure. So that's quite a high sodium electrolyte mix in that drink.
It is, yeah. So this is like one of the highest strength ones you can get on the market. So each tablet, when mixed to the recommendations, will give you 1,500 milligrams of sodium. So on average, I think most people are around that 1,000 mark as a very, very rough number. But yeah, I go over that. So my official sweat rate is about 1,400 milligrams of sodium per litre. So I need the higher recommendation for that for myself.
Yeah. You carried everything you drank. You weren't picking up cups of water en route.
No, so I actually only grabbed 2 bottles out on the course, which I took a very quick sip from. I was actually trying to be very self-sufficient. So I had the 500 ml soft flask, which was full of water and the electrolytes that I needed. And I had then the roughly 300 ml soft flask full of gel. And then that was my strategy, apart from a couple of extra caffeine gels. So whenever I did reach an aid station towards the latter stage, when I'd run out of water in my soft flasks, I would grab a water and then literally just grab a quick sip out of those. And I think I might have used maybe 3, maybe 4 aid stations just to grab a quick sip of water. I'd actually planned prior to that to use more of the aid stations, but actually because it was quite a cool day, I felt like I didn't need them quite as much. And I also did carry some extra sodium capsules. You can buy these little sort of pills that are full of sodium to top up my sodium numbers if I needed, but I actually didn't use those in the end just because I wasn't drinking that much water.
Sure, so that sounds like a good strategy, but it also sounds like quite a lot of stuff to carry during the race. So how did you manage to carry all those things?
Yeah, I was obviously worried about the weight. You know, for years everyone's tried to be as light as possible on the marathon start line, and I totally get that. But I think the sacrifice of carrying those extra bits just gave me the extra peace of mind. I had a pair of trail shorts that I wore that have an elastic pocket on, you know, both of my legs, so I can actually fit both of the bottles in there. Now, when they're both full, it's uncomfortable to run with because obviously these are 2, you know, quite heavy bottles that you're running with. So generally what I did is I made sure that one was in one leg and I carried the other one so that I could like sip on the go as much as possible. But yeah, weight is always a consideration, but I think it's more effective for me to have the fuel and the hydration that I need to finish strong than to be lighter and then fading towards the end because I've not fueled or hydrated myself adequately.
How much of your success in your marathon do you attribute to your nutrition and hydration strategy?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a marathon is so much involved in the training that you do on, you know, in those months beforehand and maybe even the years beforehand. So obviously, that's a hugely important part of the equation. I'm not suggesting that, you know, taking on a lot of gels and a lot of, you know, hydration is gonna be the biggest game changer, but it does honestly play a huge part. I think the carb load combined with the amount of gels that I took on the day, it just gives you so much more energy and it does really help you, you know, find or dig to that deeper level to make sure that you can perform on race day. So it's a hugely important part of the strategy, but it's still the cherry on top, I'm afraid. You can't not train for a marathon.
And my final question, is there anything that you would change and do differently next time, or do you feel like you've cracked it with this nutrition and hydration method and that's what you'll stick with?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I wouldn't say that I've cracked it. I think there's always like little tweaks you can make throughout. I mentioned earlier that I probably could have drunk a little bit more water. I don't think that was, a big hindrance. I don't think that's the difference between running a 225 and a 227, but that's the only thing really that when I think back, I didn't quite get right. I obviously carried the sodium pills or the electrolyte capsules, to take with me, but just didn't take them. So I think next time making sure that I took more of those on board would be beneficial to put to the strategy.
So thank you to Ant, whose insights today have been incredibly valuable. Don't forget to check out my inexpensive marathon and triathlon training plans with coach support by clicking on the link in the description section below this video. If you're hungry for more videos on marathon running, check out the video on screen now or our playlist about improving your running to get more tips and advice. If you found this discussion helpful and would like to hear more stories like this, please like and subscribe to this channel and comment below with any questions you've got about this running strategy.